afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us at this super session. I am Wendy Barr, and I run the Global and Strategic Partner Organization for Cisco. And that group includes many of our ecosystem and technology partners, which is why it was my honor to be asked to introduce today our two partners, OpNet and Dell Wise. So we have a really exciting show planned for you. We have an opportunity to hear from OpNet and to hear from PJ Malloy, the Chief Architect of APM Solutions and Senior Vice President of Research and Development. And PJ's got a really interesting case study that Randy's going to share with you for a little bit today. So with that, I'm going to introduce PJ Malloy.
Thanks, Wendy, for that introduction. My name, again, is PJ Malloy, and I want to thank everyone for coming out today. We're here today to talk about holistic APM and the critical role the network team and the network play in APM. I'll discuss how industry trends are transforming performance management, and then I'll turn it over to Randy Echterling from WellSpan Health, who will share insights gleaned from his many years in the network trenches. First, though, let's start with a video with some characters you might recognize to illustrate the serious problem we're all facing.
I can't do my job. The network is slow.
The WAN links are lightly utilized.
I don't care.
There is no packet loss.
I don't care.
The database is healthy.
I don't care.
The CPU looks fine.
I don't care about any of that.
Maybe you should reboot your PC. We need a better approach.
When users complain, the network is slow. Where do you start looking? A holistic APM solution monitors all users and all applications. That produces a lot of data. The APM solution needs to organize it for you. The business application grid tracks end-user experience by application and business group, letting you identify your hotspots quickly. This is where the triage process begins. You'll need to determine if the performance problem is due to the network or is an application problem. A good place to start is the application dependency map, which has been constructed with data collected by passive network devices. This map shows that users are accessing this multi-tiered Java and .NET application through both a web portal and Citrix. Because you can see all the relationships in the application, you can identify which tier is experiencing performance problems. An APM solution should also provide evidence as to the root cause. As measured at network choke points, this response time chart shows that the majority of the delay is due to the server, not the network. Finally, a holistic APM solution that can capture, organize, and store large amounts of detailed network data must allow you to look at performance issues from different angles. Suppose a particular user is complaining. You need to be able to find that user quickly, pull their specific transaction data, validate their problem, and determine the root cause. In this example, a particular back-end server is causing the delay. The results give both the network and application teams the information needed to fix the problem.
Oh no, not you again.
I can't do my job. The network is slow.
We are now using a holistic APM solution. We detected the anomalies that was happening. We have identified a problematic server. The problem has already been solved.
You get it. You are a total rock star.
So we've all heard conversations like that, although not normally between two bears surrounded by a bunch of pink trees. But let's just have a quick show of hands if you sympathize with sort of that situation at the start of the video, in terms of raise your hand if you believe the network is sometimes prematurely blamed for application or network performance problems. I see a gentleman holding up two hands. Very nice. So definitely a lot of hands up there. Unfortunately, it is a common knee-jerk reaction to prematurely blame the network. This is the type of problem that my company, OpNet, has dedicated itself to solving over the course of its 25-year history. We obviously all need to move past that blame the network reaction. However, one of the key points I want to make today is that that blame the network mentality is actually an opportunity for the network team to lead the charge in a new approach for application management. A change from managing performance in individual silos to instead take a more holistic approach. So in case you're not already familiar with OpNet, I'll give a very quick introduction. We specialize in application and network performance. OpNet solutions are used by a broad range of customers, including 85% of the Fortune 100. And as this says in really large text, OpNet is a leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for application performance monitoring. So that's a quick introduction. There's an old Hindu allegory that I really love about 3 blind men and an elephant, where each man feels one part of the elephant in order to determine what the animal is. The blind man that feels the leg thinks the elephant is a tree. The blind man that feels the trunk thinks the elephant is a snake. And the blind man that feels the ear thinks the elephant is the wing of a bird. With their limited views, they are in complete disagreement with each other. The story illustrates several things, including that very reasonable and smart people can come to very different opinions about the nature of a problem when their view is not shared, or when their view has a limited scope. That's actually a pretty good analogy for why application monitoring approaches fall short in today's complex environments. Applications are no longer monolithic in nature and instead span many silos. However, traditional tools focus on the performance of individual silos, such as the network, servers, database, etc., rather than the application as a whole. Similar to the elephant story, each team uses a separate tool to monitor its own specific silo. A general management principle in any discipline is that you can't manage what you can't see, yet no one sees the whole elephant. Often, application performance is suffering, yet each silo reports that each silo is healthy. The CPUs are fine, the DB is fine. While the traditional silo-based approach does give useful information, it is insufficient for managing today's complex applications. In fact, the proof that it has failed as a paradigm is very visible. There are increased incidents, blamestorming, war rooms, etc. An even larger problem with the traditional approach is that it causes a disconnect between IT and the business. When lines of business think of IT, they think of applications. But lines of business don't think in detail about underlying components like routers and switches and CPUs and storage, etc. Instead, they think about how the applications enable them to do their work and generate revenue. The lines of business basically view IT's role as making sure that these applications work and work well. The perception of how well IT is doing its job is heavily influenced by the performance of these applications. Traditional management tools provide metrics from individual silos, but not the big picture. More often than not, the business is inclined to respond, "I don't care about any of that," as we saw in the video. So there's a real need for a more holistic approach, and that's where application performance management, or APM, enters. It's a discipline that offers a new paradigm for holistically managing the application and supporting environment rather than managing the application components separately. As the diagram shows, modern applications cross many silos: the network, load balancers, app servers, VDI, cloud, etc. A holistic approach to application management also must cross all of these silos, including the network. The network plays a unique role in connecting the silos together. This in turn places the network team in a unique position to drive a holistic approach. While the traditional approach has multiple stakeholders organically attacking the problem from different angles, a holistic approach gives organizational coherence to problem solving. It gives different teams the tools they need to work together and view performance problems through a common lens, eliminating the traditional finger pointing and problem solving by committee. By focusing on the end user performance of business critical applications, APM bridges the gap between IT and business goals. Oops. Now let's take a look at the key capabilities of holistic APM. End user experience monitoring is the cornerstone of APM. There's a real ground truth to application performance as measured from the end user perspective. It removes the subjectivity and ambiguity that otherwise creeps into the conversation about whether or not an application is having a performance problem. End user experience monitoring proactively identifies problems before end users call the help desk, and it also tells you how performance has changed over time. The next component of APM is application dependency mapping. The first obstacle to solving a problem is identifying the components that make up an application. Application dependency mapping is like a CAT scan and is used as a starting point for the troubleshooting process, allowing you to piece together the different pieces of the elephant. Then, once you know the overall structure of an application, the next step is to trace individual user transactions through the infrastructure. This precisely localizes the source of the problem, whether it is the network, server, or application code. Next, we have application-aware network monitoring. This is a key discipline, including because the network is a critical vantage point for observing distributed application behavior. And when network data is organized through the lens of application services, it instantly becomes more relevant to the business. Holistic APM is also focused on collecting data from deep within each silo, including the very fine-grained data that is needed for true root cause identification. To deal with that resulting large volume of data, APM brings to bear sophisticated automated analytics to provide the smarts that turn that mountain of data into actionable intelligence. Now I'd like to delve deeper into the role of the network in APM. Especially with the acceleration of trends such as cloud, virtualization, mobile, and SOA, the network is the backplane of the modern application. The network is strategically placed to provide broad visibility and to observe all applications. The network is an ideal vantage point to monitor end-user experience. It observes all end-user transactions. The network also has end-to-end visibility into the components of an application, from the web browser all the way to the data center. It also has a unique runtime perspective for interactions between app components. The network is therefore a valuable data feed for application dependency mapping. Packets captured on a network are a very rich source of performance data and can be leveraged for a broad range of real-time and historical analysis. And automated packet analysis is a truly excellent way to do root cause identification. So in summary, the network plays a critical role in APM, and this has significant implications for the role of the network team. The network team, as we saw in the video and as was evidenced by everyone raising their hand, the network team frequently gets the blame and is inevitably involved in troubleshooting application performance problems. When dealing with fires, the network team, in self-defense, often has to step outside its realm of responsibility in order to prove it's not the network. An accelerating trend we're observing is for the network team to build on these successes to become a de facto center of excellence for application performance problems. So the really key point that I want to make today is that the network team should embrace this role and spearhead implementing APM within the IT organization. As we've discussed today, it is uniquely positioned to take the lead for holistic APM. This will further increase the network team's relevance to the business and elevate its role within the organization. This ensures that as lines of business roll out new applications and services to generate revenue, that the network team is a fundamental part of that process. And now, I want to share with you an excellent example how all of these concepts I've been talking about have come together in practice. So I'd like to introduce Randy Echterling, a network engineer from WellSpan Health. Randy will talk about how his network team drove the APM initiative at WellSpan, and he'll share some real-world examples of how APM has helped his team be more effective and more valuable to the business. Randy?
Hello, everybody. My name is Randy Echterling. I'm a network engineer with WellSpan Health Systems. But For the next 10, 12 minutes, I would like you to consider me your trail boss, your tour guide, your pathfinder, as we embark together on a journey of application performance management, a view from the trenches. Now, we're about to start this journey together, and I'm asking you to join me. I'm asking you to trust me. But you can't trust somebody you don't know. So let me just tell you a little bit about myself. I've been a network engineer with WellSpan for about 6 years, going on 7 years. I'm responsible for the design and the construction of the WellSpan network. WellSpan is an enterprise health system. We comprise 9,000 employees. We have about 689 beds distributed across 3 hospitals. We have 60 remote locations, 47 of which are your primary care physician practices. The rest are dialysis, imaging, surgical, or pharmacy. Now, prior to me starting with WellSpan, I was a consultant, primarily in the Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware area. Occasionally up and down the East Coast, and every now and then across the country. My oldest daughter is almost 7 years old, and I've been with WellSpan almost 7 years. So I think you can see the motivation that I have for deciding not to travel anymore. Now, I have about 25 years experience in the industry, in various technologies. And even though I am a techno geek, and I really love gadgets, I only just got a smartphone probably about maybe a year and a half ago, and I've only just adopted social media, so I've just jumped on the bandwagon. So just a little fun fact about myself. For any comments, questions, concerns, criticisms, feel free to email me at rechterling@wellspan.org. So I'm going to ask you to sit back. I'm going to ask you to relax. I'm going to ask you to just take my hand and join me on the journey. We're going to put on some spurs. We're going to slap on a saddle, and we're going to hit the trail. Now, our first stop along the trail is perspectives. Perspectives of technology, perspectives from the trenches. In the last 10 years, we have seen applications communicate at a rate that we've never seen before. These applications are now exchanging information. Applications that were individual, disparate apps are now communicating and transferring data. It's this that leads us to a new form of collaboration, a form of collaboration that allows us to share voice, video, and data globally. We can now act as one, regardless or independent of location. This, my friends, is the challenge. We've now increased the level of complexity with links, application flow, and information exchange. We have to be conscious and careful that we don't build a level of complexity that will guarantee failure. It's no longer acceptable for us to wait for issues. We can't just sit back and wait for those calls to come in. We need to have a system that can look at data, analyze, determine if we're having a problem, figure out where that problem is, and mitigate that problem quickly. Because by the time we receive calls, it may be too late. We can no longer just put our heads down, sit in our cubes, and plow forward, not caring about what happens with all the other teams. We have to understand that what we do impacts everybody else, as well as understand what they do can impact us. So now our next stop along the path, our next way station, will you have it? It's talking about the business drivers and the challenges. What I'm going to talk about business drivers and challenges for healthcare. Every enterprise has their own challenges. Within healthcare, our big challenges are our EMR, keeping our electronic medical record going, our imaging system, as well as standard productivity apps. Could be email, it could be intranet, internet cloud-based applications, or it could be the financial applications, such as payroll, people like to get paid, or billing, which people don't always like to get billed, each new application requires time to construct, design, build, implement, mock, and deploy, as well as train. And this involves multiple teams, not just a single team, but multiple teams in order to make this successful. In the health system, we have over 100 separate vendors and applications that are responsible for the health system. Most enterprises might only have 10, 12. We have 100, which poses a unique challenge. Now, there's always tremendous pressures due to lives on the line in a healthcare environment, but every enterprise is going to have its own pressure. Let's be honest, network is always blamed first. That is a responsibility that we have to acknowledge and we have to accept. Because without that, we are the best resource to be able to triage those calls, determine what the problem is, and get them to the group that is responsible for it as quickly, efficiently, and as effectively as possible. So whether we like to admit it, that has to be our role. If we look at the applications, infrastructure, we look at how diverse they are, this requires that cross-silo expertise I talked about. It's no longer just working in a vacuum. It is multiple teams involved in that. The other challenges could be separate owners of LAN, WAN, storage, the actual applications themselves, servers. So our next stop along the trail here is a situation that we've encountered, and probably most of you have. We've had a problem with a link. We had a site that was coming up and saying, slow. We were getting end user calls about poor experience. And our application response system said, guess what? It's outside the norm. But not just for a single app, for multiple applications, which immediately led us down the path that it could be a link problem. When we investigated it, we realized that 10 meg circuit was 90% utilized, and we found the offending device. It was a piece of medical equipment, an MRI. Instead of configured to send locally, it was sending across the wire. It was causing saturation. Now, we were able to contact our biomedical team who supports that device. They were able to dispatch one of their technicians to reconfigure it correctly, to configure it up correctly. This whole time, it took 1 hour from the start of the problem to the resolution. In the old days, we would have had to go on site, track that data down. Hopefully we find that study with that piece of equipment and that conversation going on at that particular time. If we didn't, it could have been an intermittent problem over a period of days or weeks. Now, the next situation is a little different. We had problems with our ambulatory care product. One of our remote practices of one of those 47 physician practices that I talked about was experiencing problems. They were getting increased application response time, and we were seeing that on the APM system. Now, unlike the previous example, it wasn't all applications. It was a specific individual application. We noticed by looking at the APM system that tier processing time in the server had increased. However, we noticed that traffic going through the load balancer hit that particular condition. Traffic going direct to the server was no problem. There was a new application that the medical group team turned on. It's called location-aware printing. It utilized the IP subnet from the system, from the location, to determine where the printing should be. Well, we had the misconfiguration on the load balancer to not forward the correct X header information because we mask the source IP going through our load balancer. So we were forwarding that information in the X header. We misconfigured it. We didn't send it and configure it on a per packet request. We only did it on the initial handshake. We correctly configured the load balancer, And that, in conjunction with a patch that needed to be applied to the server, corrected the problem. That problem was solved in 4 hours. In the old days, we would have had to go sniff data from multiple points in the network and take that data and try to correlate that large block of data to figure out exactly where the problem is. Instead of having a resolution in 40 hours, we did it in 4. And we did it with one person. Now, as we conclude our journey together today, and we hit our final stop, I just want to summarize a few things. APM is more than just a vital part of the network team. It is an extension of the network team, just as your arm is an extension of your body. Because without that, we couldn't function as efficiently or as effectively as we currently do. It'd be like working with one arm tied behind our back. The other component that made us successful in that is we have one person in our enterprise designated for APM. He's our master. We can have a lot of people that are good at it, but to have one person that's a master in it, and we have the best person that's in the industry, a gentleman by the name of Dave Bucks, who's the best that I've worked with in 25 years. We did this all on our own and built a team structure, and we used that. We proved it worked, and management adopted it and cultivated it. If we look at what it takes to deploy an APM system, that's at the drop in the bucket compared to what it would take for you to recover from a poorly deployed application. As we stand on that edge of technology, and we take that step and we move forward and we push that envelope, we have the ability to shape our own future. That is my call to action. We can create our own destiny. APM allows us to move forward and create our own destiny without looking behind us and realize that the road's washed away or the bridge has been dynamited. So I want to thank you for your time today. I'm going to turn it back over to PJ, and he will finish up. This was a Reader's Digest version of a seminar breakout session that I'm doing tomorrow at 1:30, so I encourage any of you to join me. So thank you for your time and have a wonderful conference.
That was really good. Thanks, Randy. That was excellent. So you saw a small preview of our products in action during the video, but this slide gives a quick high-level view of our products. And it really just gives a hint of the depth we offer within each silo, as well as the breadth across each IT silo, including it showing our latest edition, which is Unified Communication Expert, which is focused on managing Cisco Unified Communications and is based on OpNet's recent acquisition of Claris Systems. So if you want to see more about our products or continue this conversation, please stop by our booth, which is right in the exhibition center as you walk in. It's the really big booth you kind of can't miss. And then you can also pick up your really excellent "It's Not Always the Network Dude" t-shirt so that you can remember your excellent time here in Southern California at Cisco Live. So thank you very much, and have a great conference. Thank you.